Hello. Welcome to another episode of Ask the D&D Professors, now on Thursdays. So I guess that's the top of the stream announcement is that we will be moving these streams from Mondays to Thursdays. So huzzah. It's a new semester, new us, new schedule. My name is Chris. I'm someone here at OTG. My day job is I'm a professor. Um, Say hi, Scott.
Hi, Scott. My
Yeah.
name is Scott. I also have a day job where I teach things at a university. Those things are music theory, and I also am part of the OTG crew, mostly spending time doing Dungeons and Dragons things and starting to work into some Magic the Gathering things, which is also fun.
Yes, which is exciting. We had a lot of success with some kind of card game stuff at PAX Unplugged, which was very fun.
Yeah.
So we're excited to kind of start working on that side of things as well. But I think, oh, and we've got Atlas as always on the back end helping us out. So if there's a voice of God moment, that's what's happening there. Um, let's see. So yeah, I guess I don't know, Scott, do you want to
Sure, yeah. I think so. The
working on?
the the idea tonight is we're going to talk a little bit about one shots and one shot design. Maybe, Chris, you were mentioning a few minutes ago, we would do some actual one shot design live on
Mhm.
stream.
Yes.
Um, the
Yeah. So go
yeah,
ahead.
well, just the idea here being that Giving Day is coming up, and Chris is going to be designing a one shot for it. So I thought maybe we'd start with a little conversation about the one shot you ran last year and how are things going ramping into this year. And yeah, if that ends up pivoting into now we're talking about your plans and doing some brainstorming, that might be cool too.
Yeah. Yeah, so just to give a little bit more background, so Virginia Tech, which is the institution I work for, has this Giving Day thing every year where they raise money for the university and for various causes within it. All the departments are kind of pitted against each other to see who can raise the most money. I don't know, we don't need to unpack that, but it's a whole thing. It's a big event, and often there is kind of matching funds for various things. We are actually getting seeing if we can figure out a way to so that OTG, Open the Gates, can be its own kind of thing within that. Still working on that because got to deal with university financials and all that bureaucratic fun stuff. But this year we are going to do another live stream with our friend and special guest Doug Cockle, which I guess that might be a spoiler. Actually, we haven't really announced that, but Doug is in. So,
You just announced it.
uh, hey, we're doing it live. Yeah, so that'll be very fun. And so last year we did the same idea. We ran a stream. Um, with Doug, Elizabeth, the kind of our fearless leader here at OTG, and two students from the School of Performing Arts, which is the department I work for. And it was very fun. And we ran a very silly one shot with a lot of very silly puns about Virginia Tech and its arch rival, University of Virginia. Um, and yes,
Even the
uh,
name of this one shot, I think, would probably need some contextualization for folks outside of the Virginia Tech orbit.
Indeed. So yes, it was called Save the Hokey Bird. And the Hokey Bird is Virginia Tech's mascot. Um, and the saying goes, "What's a Hokey bird?" And you're supposed to say, "I am," if you're a Virginia Tech student, because what a Hokey bird actually is a turkey that has been castrated. Because Virginia Tech is an ag school. And so it's a animal husbandry term. So anyway, but the Hokey Bird is the mascot of Virginia Tech. There's a cadre of students that dress up as the Hokey Bird and run around in their mascot costume to various events at various points during the year, and at football games, of course, and other sporting events, etc. But anyway, so the Hokey Bird is a thing. It is the beloved mascot of many a Virginia Tech enterprise or team. So what better way to do something stupid and about Virginia Tech than have a random group of cultists kidnap the Hokey Bird and have the adventurers have to go and talk to someone in university administration, very thinly veiled, to go and get a quest to save the Hokey Bird.
So
Um,
this was the premise that you came up with for last year's one shot. Is that something that like you came up with of whole cloth? Was that through conversations with other folks along the way?
I think it was largely, yeah, just kind of I was wondering like what would make good fodder for a one shot and what could I make Virginia Tech themed that wouldn't get me in trouble with university legal.
Yeah.
Um, so I thought, this is and like I kind of leaned into the clichéness of it all, which Doug at one point commented on, which I thought was very funny.
Yeah.
Um, so
I remember you showing me an early draft of your notes for that
hmm.
one shot, and just yeah, the puns were relentless. Like even at that early drafting stage, it was
It
all or
was really
nothing. Let's
first and then plot. It was like, how can I make the stupidest possible puns out of the names of various buildings on campus, out of the names of various terms for various people? The dean of the College of Architecture, Arts, and Design is in there, kind of shielded through various levels of puns in various languages. So yeah, it or at least references. So yeah, it was very much designed to be silly and to be hopefully fun to watch.
was that
And yeah.
was that a novel approach for you to like take your inspiration not from there's a problem and I need to put obstacles in the way of the players to solve that problem, but instead to think I've got this thematic idea, this world building idea of like it's going to be about Virginia Tech. I'm going to do a lot of punning. They're all going to be thinly veiled, and to let that instead drive. Like, to what extent did that end up driving what ended up being the adventuring content?
Yeah, no, I think to a great extent that was kind of it. And like that is kind of different than how I normally write stuff. I think it also the fact that it was intentionally for a live stream with, people that were going to be watching and ideally, donating money because we're doing fun stuff and because they want to support the cause.
Mhm.
So that was a very different kind of premise for the whole thing. And that's kind of something to keep in mind, I think, with or at least that I try to keep in mind with writing one shots is like what is the audience, what is the purpose?
Yeah.
Like if this is just a home game thing, like it can be kind of whatever. But if it's a fundraising live stream, then that's something else, right? Like it is from the jump designed to be in front of people, entertaining them, but then also like it has to be one shot.
Yeah.
Like if you're right, like a one shot for a home game is usually not a one shot, right? It's usually two or three
Hmm.
shots.
Yeah. So many of
And
these published adventure books that collect these short adventures, and I think that's what at least I've ended up calling them more often than not, short adventure and not a
yeah,
one shot, even though one
yes.
shot maybe is the more familiar term because you never get through these things in one sitting. But
No, and like frankly, I think it often can lead to an unpleasant feeling of railroading, certainly on the part of the DM, which is me in these cases. Like I want to get through stuff. I want to have the players have room to, play out their characters, be silly, kind of, engage with the whatever I put in front of them in terms of the adventure. But it's also like we're on a clock here, right? So like and we need to get through this story and hopefully achieve some sort of narrative resolution.
hmm
Um,
yeah,
and there's a lot you can do with hand waving at the end, but anyway, go ahead.
yeah. Well, this was also, I think, the Hokey Bird live stream last year would have been before any of our PAX events. Because hearing you talk
Correct.
about this, the next closest thing that I can think of is running at a convention or a conference where you again have like this group of players who have signed up specifically for this time. That's all the time you have. You have to get it to reach some kind of like satisfying narrative conclusion for those players to feel like to feel like they've gotten what they came for. Um,
Mhm.
the clock is ticking. Um, but okay, so maybe the next logical thing to ask is how do you feel like that worked out last year for the live stream, and do you feel differently going into it a second time around with some more experience from these conventions?
Yes. So I think one thing that I learned last year and that I continue to learn and will continue to learn for as long up rope too long. I am very bad at keeping things to a set time frame most of the time. And last year was one of these moments. And fortunately, like we had wiggle room, and it ended up being 4 hours, I think, instead of three, which is what we were initially aiming for, which happens. But this year, due to schedule constraints, it has to be like that. One person has a hard out at three, and so like we're gonna be done at three, whether we want to be or not.
Yeah.
Um, so so with that in mind, I'm thinking about it a little differently. I think one thing I did last year was I designed the way I designed it, there was a lot more kind of NPC interactions at first, so I could get in more stupid puns, and also just like showcase different references to different places in on campus or in town or whatever. Like we just straight up ported the Moon Hollow Brewery, which is a place here in Blacksburg, as the Moon Hollow Tavern, which I found very fun for me.
Lovely.
And but anyway, so there was a lot of that, which like those kinds of social encounters and interactions can definitely not spiral, but like,
No, that's a place
expand.
where players like to lean into those moments sometimes,
Right.
and those are also, I think, the moments where like you've got a new character and you get to bounce it off of something in the world, and
Yeah.
you get to find out who that character is. So those are really valuable moments, but it
Mhm.
makes a lot of sense that they also can stretch out longer than you maybe have time for, and that could be stressful as the one sitting in the DM's chair.
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, one problem that I always have is DMing is like when I'm DMing, I'm very much in it, and I am very bad at keeping track of things like time and whether or not I'm hungry or thirsty. So it's tricky for me. And so like one thing that I think I'm going to do this time is I want to not minimize, but at least like not do quite so much of that. I think this is going to be a much more maybe not traditional, but it's going to be a dungeon crawl. Like, so it's going to be much more kind of
Mm.
like, all right, here's a room. You got to solve the problem or solve the puzzle or whatever it is, and then get through to the next one.
Yeah.
Because I think that will lend itself better to, a kind of the linear format of um, one shots. Because like the thing with the kind of NPC interaction is like that works great in a campaign where
Yeah.
it's like let's see what the characters do. Let's see how they bounce off of the NPCs. Let's see like do they burn down the tavern because that's going to produce an entirely separate track,
Yeah.
right? Then
Yeah.
sorry,
Yeah.
Will. I know that's happened to in your and Elizabeth's group multiple times. If only Elizabeth were here. But that kind of thing, it maybe doesn't work so well in one shots.
Yeah, because that
Kind
has such a big impact on the world. Like that
right.
changes the dynamics of so many of the other individuals there, and it requires you as a DM to spend more time like considering
Yeah.
how does the world need to react to a moment like that. You don't have the luxury of something like that in a one shot.
Right, exactly. So like it's tricky and yeah, so I think the thing with one shots and like you mentioned the conventions and things like that, like that's similar. And my internet went out, so I don't know if I caught everything that you said, but it came back. That's interesting because it's like you want their as you were saying, like you want the players to feel like they're getting something out of it, right? Because they're spending money to be at that convention, and
Yeah.
if you're on the program, then you are at least tacitly and or well explicitly endorsed in the case of places like the PTI, Paxton Together Intersections Game Library, and the Access Forward Gaming Lounge, which we run or we help run. That's there is a certain level of kind of like expectation, right? Or at least
Mhm.
I know I do, and I know all the other DMs I've talked to put expectation on themselves
Yeah.
around that. So, but the nice thing about that is like you don't have an audience, like it's just you.
Right. Right.
Whereas
It's
with a
you and
live
those
stream,
players. You do want to give them the best possible experience, but at the end of the day, if something goes off the rails a little bit, you can sort of deal with it at the table, and it
right?
stops there.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's I don't know. It's a fun and interesting balance to strike, and I really like writing one shots. I mean, I like writing longer adventures too, but it's well, and actually, so to get back to your original question about kind of the process of writing and kind of how that works, like yeah, this kind of started as let's do a bunch of stupid puns about Virginia Tech. and give me some opportunities to do really stupid voices because the director of the School of Performing Arts said that he would donate more money if I did more stupid voices. So, of course, I did. Whereas normally, like with a one shot, I think, at least with the ones that I've written recently, I have adapted them from other stories, folklore or operas, and tried to see, okay, how can I take the basic elements of this story and make it so that it flows as a narrative that is fun to play and gets to all the pillars of playing a tabletop role-playing game, especially Dungeons and Dragons, um, within 3 to 4 hours.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting and a very different challenge, right? In a lot of ways, because you're taking a pre-existing narrative or set of conventions or set of references and having to build something out of it. Whereas another way that I've written them in the past has been like, this is a cool stat block. Like, what do I have to do to get my players to fight this?
Yeah.
Um,
So, are you comfortable sharing, or do you want to keep it a secret until the live stream? Like, is this more motivated by puns and silliness? Is this one more motivated
hmm,
by the combat stat block? You mentioned it's a bit of a dungeon crawler. Is there a source
yeah.
material that you're drawing on for the upcoming one shot?
Not so far. I think it's not too much of a spoiler to say like it is. I mean, so I remember last year when we did this, at one point I had the thought, and like I think we might have talked about it with some of the players at one point. That's like this is an infinitely replicable narrative setup, right? Someone steals the Hokey Bird or abducts the Hokey Bird and they have to get it back. Like, and so the more that we do this, the stupider and thus more funny it gets. So once again, we are going to do a similar thing. We were talking with Doug a little bit about like, what are some ideas? Like, how might we do this? Because I was like, I knew I wanted to do something along these lines, but I didn't really have any ideas. And Doug was thinking, oh, okay, well, it's School of Performing Arts fundraiser, right? Let's make it performing arts themed somehow. And I was like, okay, like maybe like what? How can we do that? And so eventually, the setup I came up with, and this is not I don't this is not a spoiler because I'm going to tell the players this and the audience this at the very beginning of the thing. Basically, it's now like last time it was homecoming analog. This year, I think it's going to be graduation analog, and now an evil wizard teleports the building that is a stand-in for the performing arts building into an alternate dimension and manages to steal the Hokey Bird while he does it. So now the players have to go through a portal and then go through a dungeon crawl through Henderson Hall and its stand-in to reach the evil wizard that has done this. The evil wizard is once again based on a football rival school because we're a football school.
Mhm.
Last year it was UVA. This year, I'll leave it alone for now. But yeah. So the idea is basically like we encounter the players basically as they land after having gone through this portal. So it's like right at the beginning,
Yeah.
we're in a dungeon crawl. Let's go. And I hope that will be better because like I can just say like this random NPC from last time asked you again, hey, can you come help us? And you all said yes, and now you're in it, right? So there's none of this. There's not, which is so this is a double-edged sword, right? There's not the opportunity for the kind of role playing, more role playing centric like setup,
Hmm.
but then we're in the action that much more quickly,
Yeah.
which then lets us spend time on the kind of dungeon crawl elements, which can, of course, be like role playing centric, right? Like,
Knowing the sorts of player characters that you often get to run for, I have no doubt. I have no doubt that shenanigans will ensue.
oh, wow. Yeah, that was a very diplomatic way of putting that. So yeah.
Well, so should we talk about, you're designing a dungeon crawl after Henderson Hall? Is that a source of inspiration? Like, do you
Oh,
have
so
in mind?
not the building so much itself. My thought was basically like, and so the School of Performing Arts of Virginia Tech has a music program, a theater program, and then a cinema program that is kind of attached to theater. So the idea was, okay, maybe we have like 3 rooms, in this dungeon. Each one is themed around one of those three areas.
Yeah.
And so whatever challenge they have to solve is somehow connected to stupid puns to do with music, theater, or cinema.
Right.
So now what I have to work on is like what do those encounters look like? And I think one thing, and then of course the BBEG thing in the fourth room, where like they come face to face with the evil wizard, and they must save the hokey bird. So the thing that I am thinking about a lot is kind of having multiple ways to solve each problem, whatever it ends up
Yeah.
being. And I think leaning actually more towards being able to solve things narratively rather than with combat, because combat takes forever.
Hmm.
And I think this is one reason why last year it went over by an hour, is that I added an extra combat where they just ran into some random cultists in the woods. And even that, which was just theater of the mind, very quick, I think it took maybe 2 or 3 rounds, still added 30, 40
Yeah.
minutes.
Yeah.
So I think, definitely, I think all the encounters there should be an option to solve it in a kind of non-violent, non-combat way.
Hmm.
Um, but they should all have, um, there should be like, consequences to failure, or whatever that looks like in this particular
Yeah.
example. But then one thing I also thought about, and I don't know how much of a spoiler this is, but I think it's okay, is like the nice thing about a dungeon crawl and the nice thing about a setup where it's like evil wizard kidnaps thing, you're in an alternate dimension. If things drag on too long, maybe that evil wizard just gets bored and decides it wants to teleport the adventuring party to the final room so that they can, monologue
Right.
and harangue them. And then we can be, all right, cool. Now you get to do this final encounter because we have an hour left.
Right.
Um,
Well, and
so
in the
yeah,
context of this kind of one shot, like that's a really nice option to give yourself. That's a nice button to put on the
yeah,
console as a DM.
yeah. And I don't remember who I was talking about. Maybe it was Elizabeth. We were talking about options around this, and that idea came up. I don't remember who suggested it, but like that made me feel a lot better. It was just like, okay, at any point I can just hit the eject button and we can move on with this.
Absolutely.
So yeah, so I guess the thing that I am thinking about now is kind of what do these challenges look like?
Yeah.
What kinds of mechanics or role playing, excuse me, scenarios do we want to happen? And like what's going to be entertaining? So one thing I'm thinking about is a skill challenge of some kind, because I think those are always fun
Mhm.
to have players kind of, pick a skill, describe what their player is going to do, and then, roll the dice, see what happens.
Yeah.
Um,
It's a
but
nice
then of
way
course,
to
yeah,
give the players, a way into what's happening in that story beat. It's almost as much like combat in that everybody gets a turn, everybody has an
yeah,
opportunity. It's not like, oh, two players get really into this one side story and
right,
someone
it's
else
nice
doesn't
and
know how to
structured.
work their way in. Um, and it's also for folks who are just getting used to a new character sheet, it's a great prompt to like look at your skills, tell me what you're good at, explain how it works here,
Yeah.
like gets them into not just the story but also their character.
hmm Yeah, no. So I think I want to incorporate that in one of the rooms. The other thing too, like I so recently I read the whole Dungeon Crawler Carl series, which is a very fun kind of sci-fi series that's like a take on D&D and TTRPGs and kind of video games, um, with a whole lot of social commentary about rampant capitalism thrown in for fun. But it also like so one thing in that series is that like I don't have to go into the whole setup, but basically there's a bunch. Every book is like a different level of this dungeon, and they're these huge mega dungeons. And so one thing that is happens in all of these is that like the laws of physics, yes, do apply, but like it's bigger on the inside than it is, well, sort of. Like technically it's all beneath the Earth's crust. Anyway, point is like there is actually no restriction at all about what a room looks like in
Yeah.
an extra dimensional dungeon. So like if one room is a jungle and the next room is Arctic tundra,
Hmm.
cool. There are no restrictions.
Yeah.
So I think that having that degree or giving yourself that degree of creative freedom is both freeing but also
I
paralyzing.
was going to say it's like
Yeah.
it gives and takes at the same time because now you can do
Mhm.
anything. Oh no, now you can do anything.
Yeah.
How are you feeling about that going into this?
No, I mean, like I go back and forth between like, do I still want to like lean into this, Henderson Hall is a physical place here on campus, or rather over there on campus. I'm at home. And so like I could, play like find the layout of that and just play around with that a little bit, which I've done in other adventures that I've written. Like I find a real life layout for a place and turn that into a map of a dungeon. Um, so that can be fun sometimes, but I don't think I'm going to do that so much because again, I just want it to be linear. Because if I give people a big map, they're going to want to explore that map, and that's going to take time.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah. Oh, hey, Will just started Dungeon Crawler Call today. It's really freaking good. And there are 7 books, and the eighth one is coming out in May, I think.
I'm gonna have to check this
Um,
out.
it's really funny, like laugh out loud funny. Um, yeah, it's this guy and his cat who become sentient because
Perfect.
sure.
Yep.
And the cat becomes a caster and he becomes a kind of like his class ends up being like agent provocateur after a certain point. Anyway, not to get into that because I could be on that all night. But yeah, so I don't know. I think like I do want to stick to the kind of the idea we had, I think, of like, music, theater, cinema being somehow involved, but this is another kind of tricky thing. The kind of how do you take something that is like very quotidian, like very like a part of your everyday life, and
Yeah.
turn it into something fantasy, or
Yeah.
turn it into something like, suitable for a D&D encounter.
Hmm.
Because like I think about cinema or theater or music, and you know, I, do I have them do some sort of like you have to conduct an orchestra skill challenge? Like what are we doing here?
Yeah.
Like
We've talked about your opera adventures before,
yeah.
where, they are such great source material because almost like um opera is like known for this drama that just goes completely over the top, out of this
Mhm.
world scenarios and characters,
Yeah.
um, death around every corner.
Mhm.
Like it's so easy to take those moments and imagine that they already are happening in a
Yeah.
D&D campaign.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're describing the sort of the exact opposite in your lived experience of like this is where you go to work,
Right.
for your nine
Yeah.
to five.
Oh, God, I hadn't even like put it that way. Yikes.
Well, so
Uh,
what makes me think is, opera is already serving up these moments that are like larger than life, that are so spectacular.
mm.
What are the most spectacular events or challenges that you can think of to do with music, theater, cinema?
I
Because I see what you
mean, the
mean.
night. Yeah.
Conducting an orchestra is probably very daunting for the individual who has to do it for the first time or do it, on demand for an important assessment in their, their path through their degree.
Yeah.
How,
Yeah, no, I mean, true. We'll
if
just put
I,
in the chat, I believe satire is a good mechanism. So like that, yeah, like
yeah,
you can take, taking something that is quotidian and then blowing it completely out of proportion can be fun.
yes,
So maybe it's a orchestra of content of constructs suspended over, I don't know, a flaming pit or something. Like,
yeah,
there can be silliness in that regard, I suppose. But then I don't know. Well, you just mentioned opera. Like opera is both music and theater. And so like maybe I could lean on some of that, like something that I know well and can like, pull some other
yeah.
situations out of to like, use that as a springboard to think about how do I design an encounter.
Hmm.
I think too, like the other thing I want to think about with these encounters is like I want there to be opportunities for since there's not going to be NPCs at the beginning. I want there to be kind of memorable or at least standout NPCs, or at least stupid NPCs, that are present in each of these encounters
Yeah,
to allow the players to do some role playing and to be able to bounce off of things.
yeah,
Rather than because like I find combat fun running it as a DN. I find it fun as a player, but watching combat
Yeah,
can be mixed, right?
good in small doses, maybe.
Yeah. So I don't want it to just be like, an old school like AD&D dungeon crawl because ain't nobody want to watch that.
Yeah.
Um, so so yeah, it's there's just a lot of moving pieces with something like this, I think.
So your
Yeah.
comment about opera sort of already being music and theater has me thinking.
Mm,
I'm wondering if
yeah.
there's a way that like these three rooms could together be in the service of assembling some sort of like artwork that requires elements of all of these three disciplines.
I love that. Yeah, yeah.
I don't know what the exact challenges would be, but or how to put them into D&D, but
Yeah, 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 yeah. That's interesting.
someone's trying to make a movie and they need the direction and they need the talent,
Hmm.
and they need the underscore. Um,
Yeah, 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 yeah. And then like, you know, that's also interesting because like I think about like that setup, that premise of like, someone needs all this stuff for some reason, right? So maybe our mad wizard just like, thinks this is like free labor to put together the short film he's always wanted to make or whatever.
yes.
So
Maybe somehow paradoxically they have to help the wizard to accomplish these things only to
yes,
discover
so
that.
that's always a good twist.
Mhm,
Yes. That ultimately it was the journey was the friends we made all along, or however that goes.
mhm.
Um, so yeah, that's an interesting thought. Sorry, I'm taking notes.
But that's okay.
Let's
I mean, we
see.
are we're definitely going well into the spoilers territory at this point, but I guess this is
Yeah.
the pivot we talked about off the top. But do you want
Yeah.
to
Well, and
workshop it
like
a little bit?
I think like yeah, like I'm thinking too about like yeah, we should be able to do like music theater and dance or the cinema. There's also like a dance. There's dance classes anyway.
Mm,
Um, but I also wonder if maybe I can get away with putting my own kind of interpretive spin on this, and maybe it is kind of operatic. Like maybe there is like one. It's music, words, and scenery or something.
hmm.
And just like, yeah, you have to assemble these things in a way that makes it more like kind of like it's not a specific opera, it's not a specific plot. I'm not referencing something else. I'm referencing more like, the day-to-day things that you have to do to put something like this
Yeah,
together.
yeah. Or
Um,
behind the
but
scenes at the opera.
yeah, oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Or backstage.
Right. Yes.
In general. Yeah, I like this.
I
I think
wonder
then,
I wonder
yeah.
if there's a way to have like your party is creeping around backstage and accomplishing all of these things, and they know that at the end they're going to have to go out on stage. And the degree to which they accomplish these things, each room is going to help them somehow in the final confrontation, which is they go out on stage and have to do the thing.
Yeah.
And that gives them an incentive to do it quickly because they know
Yeah.
at a certain point the curtain's going to go up, and if they haven't made it to all three rooms, it doesn't matter. The show must
I
go
like
on.
this. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, always. Yes, I like that. So, yeah, so like there is, well, and I like the idea too that like solving the challenge gives them a positive benefit, and
Yeah,
maybe like the way that they solve it gives them different benefits depending on how they do so.
sure.
Um, and yeah, and so like this actually makes me think of a module, Tyranny of Dragons, like it's one of the very early 5e ones, that like, you fight Tiamat at the end, spoiler. But like the things that you do in the lead up to that fight, like
Mhm.
there's a lot of ways that you can weaken that, the final boss to make it actually possible to defeat a god. Um, Whereas if you don't do any of those things, you are screwed.
Yeah.
Like it's
Good luck.
CR 30 and spells less than 6 level just straight up do not work. So, obviously it won't be like that. It's level 5. But I think that, yeah, there's a lot of kind of, I think, motivations there.
Yeah.
So that's good. And I think because that's something else like with one shots, right? Is you have to maybe not have to, but like it's good to give players something to bite into quickly to give them motivation to get into it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of that with one shots is done just by the very fact of like, this is a one shot, we're going to do this. Our normal social contract of D&D or TTRPG generally is like, we're all here to play, we're all here to like put down what the DM is picking up, at least to some extent, right? It is much more magnified for a one shot where it's just like, oh, right, we're all doing this. Like, we all know we're all going to be an adventuring party and go adventure. We're not going to, like, haggle about money or decide, like, now we don't like this town, we're going to go to that one.
Yeah.
But with all that said, like, it's still good to have things, I think, for the players to kind of, say, oh, okay, that's going to help. Great, let's go do that.
Yes. Yeah.
So, yeah.
So you
Hmm.
have about what? You're thinking each room you get maybe a half an hour to play out?
Yeah. So, well, this is the issue. Whenever I plan one shots, I always think each encounter is an hour. No matter what kind of encounter it is,
Yeah.
budget an hour.
Right.
And with that, actually, now that I think about it, I've got two rooms.
Sure.
Because the third room is the final boss.
You don't have a choice about that one.
Yeah. So, hmm.
I mean, you could still. So I have two thoughts there. One, a skill challenge is a fairly short encounter often.
Yeah.
I do think
True.
that one could be significantly less than an hour if one of the three is a
Mhm.
skill challenge. But the second thing I'm thinking is if you want to do music, theater, cinema, you can still design three options and they just have to know going into it, they may not have time to do all three, but they can choose which one. Maybe it's not linear.
Yeah.
Maybe it's they have the option to go to
Yes.
any of the three.
I was just thinking that because I like the idea, and maybe I'll scrap the Henderson idea. I like the idea of maybe like, yeah, maybe the evil wizard teleports Henderson Hall somewhere else, and they go through the portal. They don't wind up there. They wind up backstage at the opera or at the theater.
Yeah.
Um, and then like they only have they're right in front of three doors, and it's like, okay, you got to go through these three doors. Maybe our evil villain does a voiceover, and it's just like, haha, you have fallen into my trap.
Yes.
You must solve my riddles in order to face me. Whatever. But like this is the degree of stupidity that I'm going for. So I
Absolutely.
like
No,
this. Yeah.
high camp.
Yeah. So yeah, camp is really true. So I think yeah, that I think will be very fun. And then yeah, the question is, all right, you go through each door and having them be kind of like theater, music, something themed, I think would be fun. And actually, now that I think about it, a fun way to write this might be to think, okay, what do I know about like theaters and how they run? Maybe I can make it's a fantasy theater now,
Yeah.
and like random shit is happening, or like, how the scenery works is magic and they have to deal with it. I don't know.
Hmm.
So because that's something that I think with like this relates to the thing I was saying about like when I take operas or when I take pre-existing stories and try to adapt them, is like I'm taking a basic framework and tweaking it, adding things to make it work in a fantasy context. So if I can take kind of like, something I know well, like, or relatively well anyway, like backstage at a theater, what does it take to run a production, whether it's a play or an opera or whatever,
Yeah.
and use that kind of as the basis for, okay, that's the shape of it. I'm just going to drape fantasy stuff over the top of it.
Hmm.
What does that look like?
Yeah.
Um, or so the what we were just talking about is kind of like I'm thinking about it as like they are getting through these things to build up to get to the stage to face the final confrontation.
Yeah.
What if, and I don't know that I actually want to do this, but just as kind of another option, what if each option is a way of them breaking something or destroying something
Ooh.
in the theater, opera house, whatever it is, to to then make that final confrontation easier.
Right.
The thing, yeah, and like that,
So
I
the
think,
wizard
yeah,
has stolen Henderson Hall in order to put on this ego piece, right? The wizard needs the support of all of these disciplines to
yes,
successfully launch this imagined whatever it is.
yep,
And it's the
um,
party's job to interfere with that in some way. The problem I could foresee there is if you put them backstage, I bet there's going to be a lot of creativity, which is great,
yes,
but it could also feel very open-ended. Like, how are you going
yeah,
to mess up backstage? I bet any group of players already has ideas before you give them any kind of guardrails for that.
Well, so but that I think like I would still use the like three doors kind of mechanism, and just like the door that you go through and the challenge that you face is not like you must solve this problem, but rather you must solve this problem destructively. I like or it's just a different kind of problem to solve ultimately.
Right. And
Um
maybe the open-endedness is good. Like that could be a
yeah.
lot of fun. It's just I worry about it being a lot of a big lift on the back end for you to be like ready for anything if you drop folks into a, you know, a given room and say go wild.
Yeah. I don't know. I The thing is like I'm thinking now, like, okay, I can pull up a map of an opera house. And, like, frankly, I can pull up a map of an opera house I have been to
Yeah.
and say, okay, I know this is what the backstage area looks like now. That's our map. Like, you just get to rampage around back there, and every room has an interesting NPC or a problem in it.
Yeah.
And you can deal with what you want to deal with. And
Well,
actually, and maybe, yeah, and like, so open-ended map, but then there's a timer, and at some point, they have to go on stage,
yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
as you were saying. Yeah, yeah.
So I'm thinking
Um,
like what are the areas of backstage? Because it's not just three rooms like, Monty Hall problem.
right,
It's like the orchestra pit and
hmm
the green room and the rigging or you know what I mean? Like
Costume shop. Yeah, like yeah, yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like the below stage machinery, the catwalks. Like there are a lot of options, especially like if it's like fantasy alternate dimension, like maybe it's just really freaking big. And
Yeah.
they have to make choices about where they're going to kind of and like you could even like I could even someone whoever's writing this, maybe it's not me. One could kind of take I don't know, you could almost like present the players with a menu. It's like, all right, you know that like there's gonna be these kinds of things in this building.
Hmm.
Which of these do you want to go and deal with?
Yeah. And way
And
more than
then
three rooms at that point.
mhm,
It's limited basically by your prep time.
right, well, indeed. Um, but I think but so here's the thing, right? Like, there can be lots of rooms, but what they find in those rooms is not like they don't know what's
Hmm.
going to be there.
Hmm.
Maybe there's 5 rooms and I have 3 encounters prepped, and so they wind up in the costume shop, and it's a slightly varied version of, encounter A,
Yeah.
right? So like that I think is more doable. But this is another thing about one shots, right? Like you want things to be linear because you have to get through a story very quickly. But one of the things that is makes D&D and TTRPGs so great is having agency and having choice.
Yes.
And so that's a balance to be struck. Not to be all evil villain about it, but sometimes you can give people the illusion of choice. And so here's some real behind the screen content. Like, you can say, all right, you have to pick between these 2 rooms, or like you have to pick, a direction to go down in this hall.
Yeah.
And what they don't know behind the screen is that regardless, oh, kitty, regardless of which door they pick, it's still going to be the same encounter.
Right.
So like there's that aspect as well.
Yeah.
Um,
But
but
in the
no,
same case, it also feels like the choice can be like it could be a genuine choice in that
mm,
they know how much time they're going to be allotted.
yeah.
I am a cat now. Um, they know how much time they're going to have. They know that there are at least three things that they could possibly do to hamper this wizard's plans.
Mhm,
They can spend that time as they want, and if they get bogged down in one room for the whole time, that wizard's just not going to be as far weakened. But they chose to go to
mhm,
this room, and they chose to spend as much time there as they did. Like those are real choices that have real
yeah,
consequences for the adventure.
yeah, yeah. And I think like the thing about that is that they have to know that that will have consequences, and
Yeah,
so like, but that's a thing that can be communicated like very easily.
yeah.
It's like you like, but so here's the thing, like I'm thinking about motivation and like the BBEG, like do they like if they're told like let's say they go through this portal, They wind up backstage at a random opera house they weren't expecting, and they hear the booming voice of the evil wizard saying, "Haha, you have fallen into my trap. You must help me mount this incredibly important theatrical production." Um, knowing, or at least knowing at least some of the people in this group of players, I could very easily see them saying, "Yeah, let's do it. Let's help this person." I want to put this show on. Um,
Yeah.
so, the question is like how to frame,
How
like, what does success look like? What
how to
is
make
what
it
is the
so
end
evil
stage?
and megalomaniacal that they have, no no way to argue that it would be fun to help them.
Oh, I got it.
Mm,
Um, help me put on this ridiculous ego piece theatrical production, or I will kill the Hokey Bird. Like I've got a
there
hostage.
it is. There it is.
Um, and so then there's a certain amount of kind of like, all right, I want to do this because we need to save the Hokey Bird, but then also like, we can sabotage or not, kind of to
Mm.
the extent that we want. Um,
It could
yeah,
also be that like they arrive and they hear the villain making an announcement over the PA system to the
yeah,
entire theater, uh, say, gloating about having abducted them, and
hmm,
and and making this threat to the NPCs that inhabit the space.
uh-huh,
Maybe the villain
hmm,
doesn't know that the NPCs have snuck through the wormhole, and
hmm,
they have
yeah,
this opportunity now to, have an element of subterfuge and surprise and creep around, and maybe then there's a risk that they might be found out along the way. Maybe some of
hmm,
the abducted uh, backstage personnel
yeah,
are
hmm,
more sympathetic to the villain, or at least fearful enough to report
hmm,
the PCs.
yep,
I don't know.
yeah,
Like, I wonder if there's a way to give them to have it be less dictated by the villain and more
yeah.
motivated by them knowing that they have an opportunity to interfere with someone who is so obviously evil.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, so this is an interesting thing about villains, maybe now, is I want it to be silly and entertaining.
Yeah.
And so I think when you have a satire or a kind of parody sort of situation like this, like I was thinking about Spaceballs, for example, right? Like, whatever that the character is, Darth Helmet.
Yes.
Like it's stupid. We all
It's
know
so
it's
silly.
stupid. Yeah,
Yeah.
like this person is not a villain, or like not an intimidating or terrifying or anything kind of villain in the least.
Yep.
But like we still kind of roll with it because it's a parody. So like, with the previous one shot, it was I basically, so they go down in this underground ruin underneath the ruins of a very lightly disguised Lane Stadium, which is the big football stadium here. And they fight Lord Jefferson, again, stand-in for University of Virginia, which is our biggest football rival, and who is an undead white, right? Like who is like speaks like this, I will kill you all, kind of thing, right? So like, again, relying very heavily on cliche. Um, so that's a very easy villain to just be like, all right, evil cult leader,
Yeah.
great. Whereas the kind of like evil villain or evil wizard villain, like you can lean all the way into like cliche, like
Mustache twirling.
hackling swords and sorcery. Yeah, the whole thing, right? Like corrupt and whatever. Or you can kind of lean into the like bumbling nincompoop kind of version of this.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know which one I want to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I
I
don't know.
guess, and that also probably changes some of the things I'm saying about the NPCs, because
Yeah,
I think about your Darth Helmet example. Like, he's absolutely like paper thin in terms of how threatening he actually seems to be to the
yeah.
audience. But
Yes.
it's been a while since I've seen the movie,
Hmm.
but I feel like there are still NPCs running around saying like, "Yes, sir, I'll doing your bidding." Like, people are still in fear of this
Yes.
obviously not fearful villain.
Yeah.
And maybe that, like, in a D&D campaign, makes them feel more like heroes when like,
Yeah.
no, this guy's obviously not actually a threat. Like
Yeah.
we've got this, everybody.
I like
But he's
that.
like,
Yeah.
no, we've got to do what he says. He abducted the whole building. Like,
I like that too because like I remember running across this like I don't know, a truism or a saying or cliche or whatever it was. That's like the characters in a book don't know what genre they're in. Right. Like they don't know the narrative cliches or tropes of whatever it is they're being put through.
yeah,
Unless it's a very, very kind of self-aware particular kind of book or show or whatever.
yeah,
Um, but that's its own genre, really. So yeah, so no, that helps actually, because then it's like, yeah, okay, this guy can be an idiot. But then all the NPCs are very much, like they think this is all serious, or they're kind of on the same level as all of this.
yeah,
So it's not strange to them. Whereas the players come in as, people who understand
right.
what this setup is, and thus, yeah, can engage with it in a way that makes it funny.
Yeah. This is
Um,
bizarre. You're scared of this guy? What are you
yeah,
talking
right.
about?
So yeah, okay. This is interesting. I mean, I definitely think I've got some stuff to work with here. I think because one thing that I was thinking about and I was kind of worried about was with a linear setup of like room, room, room,
Hmm.
that sort of thing is very self-contained. And like, or each room is very self-contained. And like I feel somehow, and I don't know why this is because I don't think it's actually true. I feel more comfortable with the idea of a slightly more open-ended map that like they have choices about which rooms they can go to rather than you must be in this room
Yeah.
and it's going to be a self-contained thing that has to be entertaining and funny.
Yes.
Like obviously all the rooms like well I will do something stupid in them, but like I don't know, there's something about the idea of it just being three boxes in a row that gives me
Yeah.
anxiety.
No, I agree. And it feels like it'll be more natural. It feels like there will be more agency. I like everything about it. Like
Yeah.
and especially because like and exposition will take care of this. The big premise is downbeats at 8, everybody be in your concert blacks.
Yes.
Like they're
Well,
they're going to have a choice like in real time you can even say like you have to shut it down by 3 at 2 o'clock real time we're doing a
yeah.
matinee. We're doing a matinee. It
Yeah.
starts at 2,
Yeah.
right? So like
Or like suddenly there's an assistant director that's like, all right, curtain in 5.
right.
Thank
Yes.
you 5. Like, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So like just knowing that you have that override switch again means you can let them run wild through as many rooms as you have time to design, and hopefully it's more fun for them, and you never have to break a sweat about what if they don't get to the BBEG in time.
Yep. 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 Yeah, no, I think that actually helps quite a bit. Because now I think like I'm not so concerned with like these self-contained rooms that like have to do with a particular theme, like music, theater, cinema, or whatever. But
Mhm.
instead, like if it's I'm leaning more and more towards an opera house just because that's what I know and what I like.
I'm still
But oh, okay.
here.
Oh, and you switched places on the overlay. Oops. Oh, it's better. Thank you, Atlas. Because like that I know that I can do that I can like I will find a map of an opera house and I will fill it with very silly things.
Yeah.
And yeah, and like the BBG is somewhere in this building. You're not going to find them until it's showtime.
Mm,
And then it's time. And ooh, and that's fun because then like the final battle can be like battle. The final encounter can be lots of different things, right? Like how do they want to interact with this like and of course like the evil wizard wants a self-insert kind of character moment of course because they're going to do this big production, why not? So like how do they interact with that, like what is the evil wizard's motivation? you know
yeah.
so okay, yeah, this is good, I like this. um mm-hmm. Yeah, I can run with this.
Amazing.
Yeah. Yeah,
should we wind things down there at risk of spoiling too much before?
I think so. Yeah, I don't because now if I'm gonna have to make specifics after this, I don't want to spoil anything. But I think too, like this is interesting, like just as an exercise to kind of like talk through, a set of encounters or like a setup for something. Like it's always interesting, like bouncing ideas, and we do this a lot. I feel like, talking about different stuff when we're DMing on opposite ends of things. But I think it's very fun as a way to get creative and to kind of like, play with things, to have somebody that you can talk to about like,
Yeah.
encounter design or DMing or like building stuff. Because, everybody's perspectives are different. Everything they bring to the table is going to be a little different. And
Hmm.
so, it's always kind of refreshing to have another perspective to kind of be able to be like, what about this? And then like, because then, maybe that's not exactly what happens, but that sparks another path and you go down that path, right?
Yeah.
And so like, you know, just you, I don't remember what it was you said of just like, whatever we said something about backstage and
Right.
suddenly I was like, right, they're in an opera house. Great. There we go.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's, yeah, that kind of stuff is very fun.
Yeah, I think like the opposite is so easy, and like as a DM, I feel this all the time of,
Yeah.
knowing that, oh, we've got another game day, it's 3 days away, it's 2 days away, it's one day away, and just like feeling like stuck in your own head of like,
Mhm.
I've got like vague ideas, or my big trap, like one for the ages, like everybody falls into this. I get so enamored with like some detail out in the world that's not going to come up in the next session, and I spend
Yeah.
3 hours like ruminating on that and get no progress towards what's actually going to, like, yeah, it's so nice to actually just have another voice in the room to, keep you honest and yeah.
Yeah, and like, and get you out of these kind of patterns that you fall into about like
Yes.
focusing on that thing. Like, I was so stuck on this like three rooms in a row thing that
Right.
like it didn't occur to me that like there's other ways, and like I don't have to do that. Like that's something that we talked about kind of as we were talking about beginning setup, but like ultimately I'm the DM, so haha.
Right.
Like, and as long as it's obviously like we still want to make it themed and fun and kind of related to the larger event, but I think like that can happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, cool. All right. Well, maybe that's a good place to end it for tonight.
Awesome. I'm really
Excellent. All right.
excited to get to watch the live stream, Chris.
Yeah, hopefully be fun. Oh yeah, so a few more details. This live stream will be happening on Wednesday, February 18th. February 18th is a Wednesday. Um, and I think we're gonna start about 11:45 so you can't start fundraising until noon because it's a 24-hour period. So I think we're gonna start streaming about 11:45 just so we can kind of, do some introductions, give everybody a kind of like, here's what's going on. And then right at noon is when we're gonna start actually playing
Awesome.
and kind of get into the adventure. So yeah, so stay tuned. We'll be doing plenty of kind of social media, advertising stuff on our Discord. So you can certainly there will be reminders between now and then. Let's see what else.
Maybe we can do a sneak preview of one of the rooms backstage or something
Oh, that would be
if
fun.
you're
Yeah, yeah,
feeling
yeah. We could
generous.
do. Yeah, because we've got I think a couple of streams or maybe just one until then. No, two.
I think next week we are maybe going to hand the reins over to Dakota for
Oh, right, for a little one shot
we
or a
might
little like
if
something.
yeah, if we can get it
Yeah,
up and running in time. So
right. Okay. Yeah, so this is actually something, yeah, that I meant to say to the stream. So we've been doing polls on our Discord about like, what do people want to see on the stream? And the thing people most want to see is like PBTA and like, TTRPG, like short things, like, 1 hour little
Mhm.
play sessions. So we're definitely going to try and do that. And so yeah, so next time will potentially be one of our fabulous student workers, Dakota, who is going to run a kind of, I think, horror one shot, basically, like
Oh yeah.
of his own design.
Space horror,
Um,
right?
huh?
Space horror, I think.
Space horror, I think, yeah. So that could be very fun. And it's what is it, the mothership system? I don't know what the
So
system's called.
I think that's right.
Yeah, so that should be cool. So so I think we'll be playing around with format and what we're doing and all that. But we are always interested to hear what people want to see and what we think is interesting. And yeah, and eventually we'll be doing some more preview stuff for PAX East once that starts rolling around because we are planning on going there, which is the last weekend in March, March 26th to 29th, I believe. Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I guess stay tuned. So this will be our regular night for at least the rest of this semester. So yeah, I think with that, we will leave you for this evening and see you next week.
See you Thursday.